This week on Not Just Another Sex Podcast.
But also on the other end, I've learned that I cause myself more emotional grief if I share everything with everybody, because everybody can't handle anything. Like the people that are actually in my friendships and relationships, I have different friends for different things. And I've learned I put too much on people if I share things with them that's not what they're there for, or they can't help with that. Like I had to realize, like, if they can't help, or if I don't want to be them in the situation, or their advice is not pertinent, now you just talking to somebody, you know, and I'm already I'm an oversharer. You know, my vulnerability is my superpower, but I have to realize that there still has to be intent behind it. And so I'm still honing that skill.
Hey, sugar. I feel like there are so many different things that I need to learn as an adult. I'm this nasty on a regular day, like on a Tuesday. I am your host, Samia Burton, and don't worry, it's not just another sex podcast. Welcome back to Not Just Another Sex Podcast. My name is Samia. I'm your host today. And you guys, I know I say it all the time that I have an amazing episode for you, but I am fangirling the fuck out, okay? But before we get into that, we got to get into a review, okay? So today's review says, great to see your evolution from bald-headed gypsy. Y'all so funny. It says, I've been a fan since you were teaching on Patreon, and I remember that you were semi-open with your audience, but it was clear there were things you were not yet comfortable sharing. Now to see how vulnerable you are is so beautiful, and it is inspiring and helpful to me on my own journey. The episode called Is Your Spiritual Insurance Paid was my favorite to date. I know that couldn't have been an easy one for you, but it was so inspiring because it helps me to keep the faith while I pursue my own dreams. So again, thank you for all that you do. My eye is just twinkling just a little bit, bald-headed gypsy, because that was one of the most difficult episodes that I've done because it was just me. I definitely still battle with feeling like I'm enough even on my own. And it's crazy how y'all listen to me when I say, hey, leave me a review. Let me know if you like these solo segments. I want to do my little Jay Shetties, you know, where I talk to y'all on my own, and y'all listen to me and y'all do. So thank you so much for just seeing me and hearing me and saying, okay, she needs that, I'll do it. It only takes a few seconds. So you guys, if you're listening to the podcast and you love it, ask yourself, have you reviewed the podcast? I know that a lot of people say it, but I get imposter syndrome. So being able to tap in and see that I am helping, not just like, oh, love the show. You guys, the show costs $0.00 to you guys to take it in, to use it, to hear all my mistakes, hear us talk about booty holes and trauma and crying and everything else. But for me, it costs a lot. It costs a lot of vulnerability, a lot of oversharing, a lot of money. It costs. It costs. So letting me know that what I'm doing is helping means more than you know. So please, if you have not reviewed or rated the podcast, please be sure to do so. But thank you so much, bald-headed gypsy. I appreciate you. So you guys, let's get into this episode. Today, I have the most beautiful and amazing Kittie J. Rose with me today. And I am so excited to have you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, baby.
Yes.
The good old Southern
draw.
draw.
Good old Southern draw, okay? You are the host of Talk to Me, Kittie. You have your own show now.
Yes.
Long time coming. Long time coming.
Yeah,
absolutely. You was getting us together in that car. You was getting us together in that car, baby. I think I found you during COVID. Or was it right before COVID? All I know is like she is spitting. Okay. So please introduce yourself to the following so we can get right into it.
I am Kittie J. Rose, host of Talk to Me, Kittie. I am your favorite relationship and communication expert.
They favorite.
Yeah. Favorite.
The one that be throwing blows.
The favorite. I really need to add emotional intelligence right there as well, because everyone knows me for helping communication.
Yes. Communication and boundaries.
Yeah, but I'm really good at teaching people emotional intelligence. I feel like I need to start
talking about that a little more too. Add that to the classes.
Yes.
I can't wait to see what you do with it. I love your content. I think that it definitely resonated with me because a lot of the things that you talk about were things that I was blind to before. I found you after therapy, but I was like, where the hell was she at when I was struggling?
That's what I've been saying. I was like, I was probably in therapy myself.
Facts, just being so straightforward. And I think that people don't understand. I know that people sometimes don't like it, but you have no idea what fantasy somebody is living in, and you trying to be so polite and not say nothing. And so they believe you, you know, and you just always been a straight shooter, and I fucks with it.
I don't know how to be, I don't know how to sugarcoat things, but I always say when you pat people on the back, it's a great disservice. I've always said that. I just feel like there's certain things you shouldn't do, because if not, people are going to be complacent.
Absolutely.
And it's just going to stunt the growth. So
you can tell the truth respectfully. It don't have to be, cold, hard, and nasty necessarily. Yeah. When's your birthday? What's your sign?
I'm a Pisces.
You also. Okay, well, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, Pisces is, because think about it, the first sign of the zodiac is Aries, which is me. And you see my childish energy. Well, yeah, that fire is there, baby.
It makes sense.
But you've been here a couple hours now. You see my little childish habits, certain things. It is. I'm the first sign of the zodiac, but my rising is Leo, so I'm double fire. So I'm also have that boss energy, but my moon is Virgo, so I'm very particular, as you can see. What, do you know yours? I should have looked it up before we started.
Randy told me something. It was, look, I'm not with I can't follow everything, okay? I know it's somebody, a Pisces, a Capricorn, and somebody else.
Oh, big money.
It's somebody. Oh, that makes sense.
Capricorn is big money, baby.
That makes sense.
Okay, why you think you do your taxes in January? It rules money, and also it's very logical. It doesn't emotions.
Oh, that makes sense. Wow.
Yeah. So,
teach me something.
All right. Look, y'all heard it here. I taught her something today. All right, but we're going to get into this episode, okay? So we start off with the adult tip of the day, because I don't know about you, but one day you look up and you like, oh, I'm supposed to have the responsibilities. Yeah. I'm supposed to know how to do CPR if you fall out. I'm supposed, and all of that stuff. But sometimes adult tip of the day is like my therapist says, or like, here's a life hack, get you a house cleaner or something like that. And it's just one little thing a day that you learn, and it's like, oh, damn, I didn't know that, no matter how old you get. So today's adult tip of the day says, I'm one of the richest people that ever lived because I wake up every day and I need nothing. Cat Williams. And I saw that, of course, with all these shenanigans that's going on in the internet. But I really love that quote, because for me, that's exactly how I feel. Even though my resources change and fluctuate and all those things, a lot of people say, how can you sometimes go through these things, or how can you power through? Like, I know you probably tired. You done got off tour and things like that. But it's like, I'm rich. Every day I wake up and I want for nothing. I don't need anything. And
you know what? I took that a completely different way.
I would love to hear it.
I made that more spiritual, because I always say that I'm wealthy in spirit, and I would much rather be wealthy in spirit. I'm a believer, wealthy in spirit, wealthy in the word, wealthy in God, rather than necessarily be rich on earth.
Absolutely.
Financially. So when I heard that went a complete different way, I'm like, that's right. I am. In spirit, I am. Absolutely.
Absolutely. I feel like when you say that I need nothing, for me, it's my listeners know, because it's been a journey, and I know we're getting to know each other. So here's our little first date. Is that when I transitioned into production, I transitioned out of a lot of things, and so that meant losing a lot of things, and it was one of the happiest times of my life. Yes, one of the worst, quote unquote, years or most difficult times of my life is one of the best ones ever, and that is because I'm safe and I'm sound inside, which is something that I've never had before. And I have, I my first company did hit, $1 million, and I mean, it was beautiful, don't get me wrong, but I didn't have that same spiritual security that I have now. And so I need for nothing, because I don't need anything. I don't necessarily need anything. Now, my want list is long, but that's not the same,
Because you're fulfilled.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's what's important.
Hey guys, I've been getting asked, are you going to do a Black Friday deal? Honestly, I have no idea, but I do think I have some news that just might suffice. If you guys haven't noticed, we have been updating all of our Sexual Essentials content, including our masterclasses. So for the last time, the 3 masterclasses that have sold over 10,000 copies is available now in one bundle. Yes, that's the Mouth Masterclass, the Dick Riding 101, and the Masturbation and Squirting class. All 3 of those are available in one course now for $100. If you didn't know, each of those classes is normally $100 a piece. So make sure that you take advantage of this, because it's for a limited time only, because these classes are being taken offline. All right, enjoy, and back to the show. All right, so next we get into our Twitter talk, and Twitter talk is because we're gonna pay homage to Black Twitter. Black Twitter is the culture, and even though it ain't even Twitter no more, but guess what they still call it? When you say Black Twitter, you know what I'm talking about. You know,
I can't stand it.
Your mama named you X, so I'ma call you that. Shout out to my girl Levon, okay? And so it's just where my shows be real spiritual. We gotta heal, or things like that. But I was like, people like a little tea or something to debate about, a little debacle. And so this is the closest I can get. Okay, is a little 5-minute. Okay, this is the messiest it get. All right, so I saw on the internet it said it was a quote. I apologize because I don't remember the page and I didn't take the whole quote. I'm sorry. I only needed a little part. I took what I needed. It says, "You leak energy when you overshare. Be private. Don't tell people more than they need to know." And I wanted to talk to you about that because you've always balanced vulnerability.
Yes. Ooh, I like that. So, when you are an open diary, people can exploit your vulnerabilities. They can exploit your weaknesses. And so I do believe that oversharing can be a problem. I'm a firm believer that oversharing is a problem. You still have to have a sense of privacy to protect yourself, right? You never want to fall victim to an abuser, a manipulator, or an exploiter. They're going to use all of that against you. Also, you give people a blueprint on how they're going to treat you. So if you come in, you talk about all of your past grievances or past hurts or wrongdoings or things that people have done to you, people can emotionally blackmail you right off of that. And then you get stuck in this pit of manipulation and abuse. So I'm a firm believer that you have to have personal boundaries with yourself.
Yeah.
What am I willing to share? And what should because people need to be gradual. People meet people and they're like, I want to connect with you and I want to tell you everything. I'm an open book. You shouldn't be an open book. Gradually get to know this person so that way you can figure out if this is a genuine connection or not.
Yes, I understand.
So
that.
Yeah.
I have two experiences that it makes me think about. One being and this is really great, especially when you're looking for a healthcare professional.
Yes.
I had an astrologist who also was doing life coaching. And of course, when you first go to people, and I've been through all different types of therapies. And so, you keep changing and you keep getting fired as you grow and keep trying to find different areas. And at this time, that was where I was going next, and how it started and what I learned was all real. But the ending of that relationship, that business relationship, was because when I corrected and called out something, because now I've learned, I've been through all these things. I've learned, I'm like, hey, this isn't correct. The things that used to be my problem was used against me for her to protect. Like, no, that's not the case. You do this. Actually, I don't anymore. And I said what I said, So there was that. So I think that for a moment it was difficult for me and I haven't been back to a therapist, a life coach. You're the closest that I'm and I literally, I've been balancing my calendar. I'm like, I'm gonna go to these classes, but I'll be missing stuff on my calendar, which is a whole nother topic for another day. And so I'm like, maybe I'll get into some group classes. That way I don't have to necessarily develop that personal relationship for a while, let myself heal from that. Yes. But also on the other end, I've learned that I cause myself more emotional grief if I share everything with everybody, because everybody can't handle anything. Like the people that are actually in my friendships and relationships, I have different friends for different things. And I've learned I put too much on people if I share things with them that's not what they're there for, or they can't help with that. Like, I had to realize, like, if they can't help, or if I don't want to be them in the situation, or their advice is not pertinent, now you just talking to somebody, and I'm already I'm an oversharer. My vulnerability is my superpower, but I have to realize that there still has to be intent behind it. And so I'm still honing that skill.
I like to place boundaries on myself before I place them on other people. And I'll kind of give you a list of them. Physical boundaries are a big thing for me. I don't necessarily like people to just feel like they can just be in my space all the time. I feel like if I have a closed posture, that you should be able to read that I'm closed off right there. If I have an open posture, then yes, you probably have the green light to go. But I do believe in consent in all things. Emotional boundaries. I don't believe in overloading people with whatever it is that I'm going through emotionally.
Yeah.
Because some people don't have the emotional nor mental capacity to hear all of that. So I set that boundary with myself. Like, sometimes you can share things, but sometimes you just have to hold off, be able to read a person, see if it's there. But no one should ever be your dumping ground.
Absolutely.
Conversational boundaries is a big one. Back and forth for me. There are certain conversations that I don't have with people. I won't allow myself to gossip. I'm really big on not gossiping. I don't like the way that it feels. I don't like to talk about people, especially behind their back. If I'm not gonna say it to your face, I'm not gonna say it at all. And then content boundaries are another big one for me. I know when to stop the social media consumption. You have to.
As well as what you post.
I have to give my mind some rest. I don't like to see negative things. Most of my feed is about relationships and marriages anyway, because it's what I do. So most of it is. But if I see things that are negative and stuff like that, you will not see me consume that. I know that it's time for me to turn it off and come out of it.
That mean I didn't scroll too long that I done ended up over here in this algorithm. That ain't even on my thing.
Yeah. But I'm really big on that. I'm really big in protecting my peace. I love to protect my peace. As much as I love people, I do realize that not everybody's for you. Yeah. So I don't make meaningless connections at all. If you give me the slightest feeling that we're incompatible, and I don't care what it is, business partnership, friendship, anything like that, the slightest feeling that we're incompatible, I'm not forcing that.
Yeah.
I send you off for love. We can go to brunch. I always tell people that we can go to brunch.
You better than me because I ain't offering.
Just let y'all know right now. If I ever invite you to brunch, it's not a good thing. Promise you it's not. Over. It's not a good thing.
It's crazy because I love brunch. So if I invite you to coffee, you know what it is? I can't even say that. If I don't see the value, especially now, I gave so much of me away for so long that I realize sometimes I feel like I'm making up for lost time, or I gotta, just be more present. And not take advantage of what's been given to me. Right. But also I'm in a space right now that I'm trying to get back to a certain place, or either get to a certain place. And there is a level of sacrifice that I have to put in right now, even for myself. Yeah. So everyone can't have access right now. And also I don't have the compartments to give them space for where I have access to. Like I'm not being super social right now. Right. I'm only the people that know what's going on and that are helping this. I'm seeing this vision through. And until I do that, I have things that I want to do next, but I can't do it if I don't get done with this. So
that's like the main reason why I haven't been establishing connections. Why I'm not looking for friendships or anything like that. I'm just not. My assistant, my husband, they know everything. No, I'm serious. And I'm being honest. They know everything that I'm doing. And like some people who are trying to develop connections with me, build friendships, they don't understand when I get quiet, it's nothing against you. And I always tell people to stop personalizing things. It's nothing against you. Yeah. I get quiet because I'm in my zone. Yeah. I'm there and I'm trying to figure things out. And I don't like to be distracted in that time. That's another reason why building connections right now, it's like, because then it'll be another distraction. Then I have to actually invest into people. And if I'm investing into my craft, it's going to be hard for me to invest into other people.
Absolutely. So, I can't show up and it's not going to be reciprocal. Exactly. And then you going to think that, oh, you acting funny and this is this. I tell people all the time, like, people like, oh, you always at the content house. I want to come over. I'm working. Now, don't get me wrong. I love what I do. And I love every single person that I work with. But the reason that they're here is because also if I say, hey, y'all, let's go ahead and plug up the camera. Let's talk about this. Yes. They're with it. They're like, okay, let's do it. Now, after a certain time, they're like, somebody take your ass to sleep. But but most times they with it, or it's like, all I talk about is work. And it's fun and it looks enjoyable. But at the same time, you might not be.
I just feel like God have mercy. Okay, I'm sorry. I feel like I can hear someone saying that because just based off what you said earlier.
You had to be talking to me. Somebody, what are we talking about right now? You just said you want to do this, and I'm like, we're going to do it all, guys.
Someone told me that. I'm going to laugh. I'm going to scream out, laugh, and rub my feet together and go to sleep. You know what? You're right.
You're right. The other night, we was up till 4 o'clock. Samia. And we had to shoot at 7.
Oh, yeah, I would have told you that. Girl, if you don't go to bed.
They was into it, though. They volunteered. They could have walked off. They could have went to sleep. But no, let's get into this. Let's get into these topics. We clearly already fell into it, right? So I would love first to just start off with a little background on you, and you can make it as short as long as you'd like. But of course, I'm privy to your prior interview here with Tiff. So I think that is very interesting, and I think it's also important for people to know what you came from. And I'll definitely leave with that vulnerability first. Okay. People understand that. I'm here now and I'm telling people go after their dreams and, stand on boundaries and go to therapy and things like that. But I used to be a terrible person. Yeah. Not on purpose. You ain't know, did it? That's usually how it goes.
I agree with you because I did as well. I used to be that person.
Yeah. It's definitely one of those things where, sometimes we don't like our parents, or we don't like this and all those things, but at the end of the day, you still are of them, and everything they taught you probably better at.
Right.
So all of that talking to people crazy and not having any regulation over my emotions and crazy anger, and just going from 0 to 100 real quick, and expecting people to still be around after that, and just go right back into it and things. It was difficult. And, you know, I'm out of a marriage, not necessarily just because of that. It was, of course, a full circle thing, but I'm very aware of the part that I played a role in when it comes to that. But I think those are great people to learn from. And I think that it's important to know that if I can come from that, then you can too. So I would love if you share more about your background, because we see the amazing Kittie online, but what was it before?
How far back can I go?
Going.
I've always had anger problems, and I do mean they were severe anger problems. Since I was a little girl, I didn't understand why I used to rage the way that I did, and it would be internal rage. It's just like I want to break something. Like literally, it was bad. It was like I want to set something on fire. I want to break something.
Oh,
it was that
fire
bad.
starter.
Yeah, it was that bad. And of course, I come from the Kojic background, so it's like that's a demon. First of all, okay, can y'all not low key call me that? But anger problems, and my anger problems haunted me through my teen years and my adult years. So that's definitely one thing. Of course, you heard me talk about it. Just father wounds, stuff like that. I was an anxious, preoccupied attachment, very codependent. I was married before. Many people know that who followed me. I was married before. Didn't realize how controlling I actually was in the marriage. Didn't realize how much I limited him in the marriage as well. Like having the need to be right and stuff like that. Wasn't argumentative. It's just didn't give him a safe space to really speak on things. Now, this is not me taking away from anything that in any of his shortcomings, but I have to own up to what mine were. And I was young. I had a child as a teenager, and then I got pregnant pretty quickly before I even married him. And my family's like traditional when it comes to like, you're supposed to be married and stuff. And so it's like that pressure is like, okay, I'm supposed to be married. I was not ready for that.
Yeah.
That was like, I can say that was my biggest mistake because I brought someone in who probably wanted that, and I didn't. I feel like I needed to be married because I had a child.
Yeah.
And so that was a huge sacrifice, and I hated it. I didn't like it because I never had a chance to just explore me and just really be myself in my own world. And so definitely that. It's really just those two. I can honestly say, I wasn't the best friend. I know that it's a lot of ex-friends who would say, Kittie, you weren't there for me all the time, because I had moments where I really would just shut out. And it's like, it's my world, it's my bubble. I don't care. This is what I'm going through right now. I will talk to y'all in a couple of months, stuff like that. I can say I was an a-hole at times. I can honestly say that I was. Not saying that all of my friendships were on me. Some of the friendships just needed to end because of that person. But I can honestly look at some of my friendships and say I just wasn't the best person. I did lack boundaries. And that codependence, you do lack boundaries. People pleasing was horrible. Yeah. It was bad, like to the point to where it's like and mine was financial. So it's like, because I always really made good money. It's like, I got you.
Energy, got some money.
And then I used to say, well, I just like giving gifts. Oh no, I was desperate for love. I had to be honest with myself. It wasn't that you like giving gifts. Girl, you don't even like shopping for gifts. Shut up. It wasn't even, if we really want to go deep, it was never that. That was desperation is what it was. I was trying to buy love.
Yeah.
That's what it was. If I buy you all gifts and then I get that happiness, I get those smiles, it proves that I made you smile. That proves that I'm good enough. And so that was the ordeal that I went through. But when I was able to set those boundaries, now at the beginning, they were horrible. I'm not going to lie. My family was mad at me. People were mad. They like, you just so harsh. And I'm like, I'm protecting myself. And then I realized, girl, these are the most harsh boundaries.
Can't nobody
I
was
punishing
get in.
people through my boundaries.
Yeah.
I was just because I wanted to prove something to myself so bad that I was insensitive to what everybody else needed from me. And so I really had to go through that process of understanding, like, you can set boundaries and still love people and be around people. Like, you don't have to set boundaries and say, I'm just not going to hang out with y'all. Like, that's non-reciprocal. Yeah. They need time with you as well. Yeah. So definitely I had quite a bit of a journey. I've done some things that I think everyone can say we've all done things that we are not proud of and we wish we can take back.
Yeah.
That's definitely my story. It's a lot of things, but most of those things I've forgiven myself for. And so I don't even look back on them. It's like, that was not who I am today. I had a lot of growth to get to that place. So
absolutely. Yeah. And you're helping other people so they don't have to go through it as well, and not as long, and you know, doing everything that you can. So I think that definitely matters. Like, we all have a past, and you can't, you don't know what you don't know. And now that you do know, and even acknowledging that, and you know, I'm pretty sure it's people that's listening to your work now, and even hearing you say that giving them, you know, even some closure there. But I can definitely resonate with that. I did not realize I was having the issues that I was having. I knew the problems. I knew the problems were there. I did not realize the accountability that I wasn't holding myself to, but also if I didn't hold my parents accountable, then I really couldn't hold me accountable. So I didn't cut my parents off until almost 30 years old. And, you know, that's crazy, seeing that this is a known fact. This is what we know is going on. We know that the help is not being had and all these things. So really just getting, it's almost like a pimple, like really getting the head out. Otherwise it's going to keep going back. And so, you know, I really resonate with that.
People don't understand that it's okay for you to set boundaries with parents.
Yeah. And most of the times that's really where the boundary needs. I found out that I was really making rules, not boundaries. And that was because I really didn't have the capacity to set the boundaries with the people that really needed them.
Yeah.
And then I will say that I still struggle with control, because I understand that I need a level of discipline over my life because of, I can be aware of some of these issues, but some of them, when you lack the love, you've been taken advantage of by the people that you establish love with first, right? Your parents. Some of those issues will never go away. I know how to handle them, and I know how to, you know, I know how to do that. But I definitely struggle with not being controlling, but also knowing what I need. Like, my boundaries say, you know what, that's too much for me, right? But also, I don't want to control anybody else. And so I can look at the past and say, I see how this was really controlling. And I see now, this is me having a conversation with someone, telling them like, hey, this is kind of how I am, and this is what this does to me. So I'm not telling them. I'm not like, oh, well, this is the rule here. No, it's like, hey, I have this issue, and this is what that makes me do. And so I apologize, but this is how I think about this. And then let them have a say like, well, this is how I do things. And sometimes it's a understanding. It's a, hey, I know that this is a me thing. Can you save space for me to help me work through this? Sometimes I need that. But I think I'm trying to find the balance between being too controlling and having boundaries and discipline because of my issues. Do you have anything to kind of like add in that from
between you being too controlling,
but then also the boundaries and discipline? So boundaries and discipline kind of being together, and not going over to controlling. Now, I know me before, so I know what I was like as a super controlling person, but also I'm a very particular person. So it's like so many different things that have very fine lines between them.
Yeah, that's where I'm trying to figure it out, because I know some people, like, sometimes perfectionism can look like control. And then also some people use control because they don't want to feel powerless. And some people use control as safety. So I'm curious where yours is coming from before I can speak on boundaries. I'm trying to figure out exactly where yours is coming from.
True. So my boundaries are around, one, being able to acknowledge how I feel. So just coming into my honesty very late is still something that I'm definitely developing, right? So being honest that I feel uncomfortable. I'm not okay with this. Even if there's nothing wrong with it, there can be something can make me feel uncomfortable, and also another person is not wrong. I had to learn to say that. But you know, when you do that, you're almost starting arguments or things like that, because people are like, well, what's wrong with that? I didn't say anything was wrong with that. I'm saying that I'm not comfortable with this. And even being able to save space for myself. And so it could feel like, damn, you got to be a certain way to be around Samia. No, I'm just a very sensitive person. I'm very sensitive, unfortunately, to my past. I have to tell people, if you want to be my friend, you have to understand that I have some issues. So I think that people see success, and I don't know if this is they see women as this strong thing, or like you don't look like anything's wrong, but it's like I have all these emotional issues that I'm telling y'all about. But when you're talking to me, you forgetting all these things. Like, I'm working on this, I'm in therapy for this. You know, so it's definitely a thing where it's like, if I'm speaking up, am I speaking up because it's a boundary, or am I being controlling? So
I feel like if you were being controlling, then it would have to have a strict outcome. Because in order to be in control, there has to be an expectation, which means it has to be a strict outcome. and a boundary is not the same thing as that. So, and I'm trying to make sure that I'm following you the best way that I can.
I know I'd be all over the place. I know.
No, I just want to make sure I'm following you the best way that I can.
I will say that your comment that you just said, I would say my expectation is communicating. I don't like things being if I don't understand, I have to ask you about it so I can understand. I will say that before I used to think that like, oh, husbands should just come home, or because also I wasn't allowing myself to go nowhere. Ain't nobody asked your ass to stay at home. Why you go have a life, you know? And then now it's like, and I'm single as a dollar bill, y'all, but still, it's one of those things. Now I realize I just like a heads up. I'm a considerate person, but also, are you being over considerate because you really just want somebody to be over considerate to you? You know what I mean?
Overthink.
All the time. I have all the things on the list. I be having all the things on the list. Like,
but your overthinking is attached to dysfunctional assumptions. Like, you're creating assumptions that they really have no basis.
You know what I truly believe, that if you have a dad that is violating your body at a certain age, that's one. Mind you, you have your parents. They're the base. So if you have that, right, that's one parent that's violating the trust. When your mother stays with them, now you have there's nobody that's backing you, right? Yes. And I come from an entire family that's keeping these things under the, sweeping things under the rug. So there's no safe place. And so if these are the people that's raising you, until I had my child was the most triggering thing to me. Everything went crazy. My husband at the time was like, is something wrong with you? Like, I was so I didn't know what was wrong. I didn't trust a soul. But now it's the truth, because now I'm protecting my child. Now I have to say, why don't you want to take your kid over there? I don't want them to touch my kid. Like, now I don't always trust myself. So now I'm like, okay, I have checklists that I go through to say, okay, let me just make sure. I have a very gullible characteristic to me, not just being a younger spirit, right? But also, until you 26, calling out your parents like it's a version of Stockholm. I thought everything was fine. I knew what was going on, but thought everything was fine.
So that's what it is. So that makes sense. So the way that you're compensating for a subconscious belief is by being controlling. So the belief is because you have been violated, that makes you feel powerless and helpless in those moments. You don't feel safe by one person, and the person who is supposed to protect you didn't protect you. So now you have to create your own safety, which yours is really just, it's not a real safety. It's a false sense of safety that you're creating by being in control to help you avoid feeling powerless and to help you avoid feeling helpless. But now you're creating harsh boundaries, and almost in a sense, you're subconsciously, I'm going to say unconsciously, punishing other people for mistakes that other people made. It's just a subconscious attempt for you to protect yourself. In other words, it's another form of self-sabotage. You have a fear of the unknown. You don't know what's going to happen. That fear of being hurt, the fear of being unknown. So in order for me to make sure that I can still predict what's going to happen, I just control all the variables in my life and your life. That helps me feel like I'm in control. Well, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. But in a sense, your boundaries are too harsh right now because you're adding an unrealistic expectation to it as well. So it's very polarized. It's like white or black, no grace, no gray areas. Like either it's going to go one way or another. It's no room in between.
And you know what I found is that it's the communication for me. Yeah. I now deal with people that have their own boundaries that are strong in themselves. So they could say, no, like I love being corrected. I'm not gonna say I like being criticized. I don't think anybody likes it, but I ain't gonna lie to you. Accountability saved my life. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, it was never bad intention. But if you won't tell me, I literally don't know. And so I think that's the thing. So many things in my life, I just felt like, why are we lying? We're literally acting like this isn't happening, and I'm believing that this is okay. We're acting like this is okay. I'm believing, and you're raised from that, right? If I was raised by a robber and then I became a robber, then it's like, what you mean robbing bad? My parents is robbers. You know what I'm saying? So, like, you don't realize it's bad when the people that's raising you to be like this is fine. So I now have relationships with people that can talk to me, that can say, no, that doesn't work for me, or Samia, you need to get out the house, or and that's how I really work through that. So for the longest, I didn't have any new friends. I didn't have any new friends because, of course, I know how my friends are. I can predict this, right? But now I have all these new people in my life every single day, and they can stand on their own 2 feet. So they can say, no, that doesn't work for me, or actually better like this. I'm like, oh, okay, thank you for letting me know. Like, I'm very big on that. I have to be around people that can speak for themselves, because otherwise I'm gonna speak for you. And I don't like being around people that I have to speak for. I don't do it. So all of those things are absolutely true, which is why I keep myself out of situations with people that because otherwise I'll walk right over you. And I don't want to be around anybody I have to walk over, that I can walk over, because that's still something I'm working on. So that's why I say the discipline goes in, because I understand that I do things, so I make sure I'm around people that are strong enough to handle the things that I'm still working through. And I think that can feel very lonely. That could definitely feel lonely.
It's a lot of lonely roads, but you know what? If you don't see, I think that sometimes we call things, well, I'm not going to say that, because things do feel lonely, but if you change the way that you see solitude or being with yourself, and you don't attach it to necessarily being alone, then it'll change the way that you view certain things. But if you tell yourself it's lonely, that feeling is going to exacerbate, and you're going to operate in that loneliness, and then you're going to seek connections. Just say it's okay for me to be in my own solitude for right now, so that way the feeling doesn't become bigger than what it needs to be.
Absolutely. And see, and again, another thing that I've already worked through, so like I've been by myself for a couple years now, and I love that. Like I've absolutely fallen in love with me. I see me, and I love it, and I think I'm very beautiful now within my imperfections, my flaws, and all the good things too. Good. And I love that, because now I see that in other people, and I'm very willing to, I'm like, okay, these are your flaws, that's fine. But I would love to talk about the empathy for others and their flaws, but also making sure, and I think this might be something for the listeners, you can have empathy for others because you can recognize what they're going through. But how do you decide, okay, I can have empathy for this, but this is also too much for me? How do you draw that line, that difference?
When you realize that your empathy is causing you to take on emotions that other people have, that's when you're supposed to draw the line. Because that's when it becomes misplaced, right? If let's just say that you're listening to somebody's story, and it's a very sad story, right? And you're empathizing and you're sympathizing. So you're showing sorrow and stuff like that, but then you adopt the sadness, and now you're trying to create a solution for them without actually just helping them. You're trying to be the solution. That's when you're supposed to draw the line. You can absolutely attempt to step into somebody's shoes and try to understand where they are coming from. That's absolutely okay. You can validate the emotion that's there, but you have to tell yourself, this is not my situation still. So I can validate the emotion, but I can't adopt the emotion. If you know that you're taking on somebody's anger, now, because they're angry at somebody, you have disdain toward this person, or you have anger towards a person that you don't know, that lets you know that you don't have boundaries with yourself, and you don't have enough of a guard to tell you, this is not mine to carry. This is not my emotion to carry. I could be the support, but that's it. And that's what people have to understand. Because I used to be that person, so I do understand that. I used to be that person that will listen, and I would try to figure out every solution I could for that person, realizing that's not my problem. They have to do the work themselves. I can be the ear. I can say, I'm sorry that you're going through that. That must be tough. But that's still your emotion to work through.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. It's the southern part for me. I definitely found I'm still on that journey. So I'm at the point where now I don't do the work for other people. I can listen, right? But then alone, I know that it's on my mind. It's still bothering me. It's, and so, but also I know that my vulnerability and being able to empathize with others is also a part of my gift. So I'm still balancing what affects me, and how being able to, like, if we say we have an issue, if we don't talk about it, it's going to bother me until we talk about it. That's exhausting. And so even the biggest grace I think that I found is understanding even more of maybe the clinical things that I'm going through. So like I have a psychiatrist appointment that I'm waiting on. Before we started the session, she was like, "Oh, ADHD." And things like that. And so it's crazy because sometimes we have this we're so confused and we feel so guilty, but we're undiagnosed in things and stuff like that. And so we can't even get the grace that we need from others because we can't tell them the instruction manual that come with us because we don't even know it. So I would love for you to talk to that, even just from a relation, like kind of just switching gears a little bit to a relationship standpoint, because that is your your bread and butter. And so I think that and that was the best segue I could do without just switching completely with the ADHD thing. That was the best I could do. All right. So kind of just switching a little bit because we do love others. And I think that we are very critical of our partners. Of course, I think that our lovers are sometimes the people that we meanest to the most, because they're with you all the time. But how do we balance loving them and having the empathy for your partner while they work through things? Now that we know that sometimes they're dealing with stuff that they don't even know that they're dealing with. And because sometimes like people be like, oh, after you be like, oh, I found out I have this. Now they have a little bit more patience for you because you didn't told them, do you have any?
Yeah, it's a couple of things. For one, stop believing that your partner is a reflection of you, because they're not. They're a reflection of their own inner experiences. Whatever they have gone through that is still in their subconscious mind, whether it is past experiences, memories, beliefs, anything like that, that's the reflection that they are. Your partner is not you. As much as you want them to be you, you want them to operate like you want them to behave like you and think like you and process their emotions like you, they cannot do that. And then that comes with a level of understanding and compassion that you have with that person. You have to realize that although you have a label, you have a title that you have placed on this person, they are a human being. You have to remove the title and the label from that person and see them as a human being. If you see that maybe they are showing like some, emotional outbursts and stuff like that, maybe on a mental level, you see that there are some key differences between us, like the way that we focus on things, the way we organize things, the way we recall things is a lot different. You're going to have to give some type of grace right there. You can't put these unrealistic expectations on people and try to get them to meet that, because then you're not giving them any grace. Allow that person to be who they are, but you have to be willing to sit down and talk about it as well. Say the things that you notice without judging them. That's a big thing, is saying that, hey, I notice that you do this whenever I'm speaking, versus you never listen to me.
Never and always. The
overgeneralized statements. You never listen to me. You always do such and such. That overgeneralized statement is going to make them defensive. But if you say, hey, I notice that whenever I'm talking to you, there are times where you kind of, shift off in the conversation. And then maybe they'll say, I didn't realize that I did that. When's the last time you seen me do it? And, and then, then you can highlight a moment then, so that way they can recall, and you're identifying the problem rather than judging them or attacking them, because certain things can be personal character attacks, especially when you use statements like all, always, never, things like that. Like, you never clean up. I do clean up. I cleaned up on Tuesday and Wednesday. What are you talking about? Stuff like that. So I think that a lot of compassion, empathy, validation, really big on validation. You don't have to validate the experience, but you can validate the feeling and the emotion that's tied to that. So I think those are key things. But back to what I said about seeing them as a human being, it's the same thing. If you had a child, we just put these unrealistic, idealized expectations, because sometimes we romanticize things, and sometimes because we see things that we like in other people or their partners or something like that, we idealize that, and then we assign it to our partner. We try to make them fit in a mold that they're not designed to fit in. You have to realize that some molds are not designed to fit in. You're human. How can I make sure that I'm not dehumanizing you, but I'm empowering you in some way as a partner? Takes a lot of time and a lot of patience as well. And if you haven't worked on your patience,
you can't do anything.
It's going to be a hard wall that you're going to have to face. It's so many times that I have to work with couples, especially like with undiagnosed, mental disorders and stuff like that. When we get into that and we start highlighting like symptoms and, signs and symptoms, and I'm like, okay, this is what this may sound like, but of course they have to go on their own individual journey to figure out exactly what it is, because I work with couples primarily. So I want to be able to just focus on what's going on within a relationship. But sometimes you'll see certain things, like as we were speaking of earlier, ADHD. I've had so many couples do that, where it was one couple where the other woman was, whenever they were talking, the one that had the ADHD, she had to look at her phone. She had to. It's like she could talk for maybe a good 2 solid minutes, and then she's like, and and of course her wife is like, you're not listening to me. And she's like, I'm trying to listen to you, but she was getting attacked the whole time in the conversation. So her mind was trying to shift off something that wasn't running up her anxiety and that wasn't triggering her and setting her off. She had to find something to soothe her quickly and take her mind off of what was going on. And so I had to give that wife a different approach. And then, of course, I had another couple where the husband wasn't able to like really keep up with plans, dates, anything like that. And he would write them on a calendar, and he still couldn't keep up with it. He just couldn't do it.
What you trying to say?
I'm just saying, and he couldn't keep up with it, and she felt neglected. And so, of course, the way that she would say things to him would feel like an attack. You just don't care about me because you're not keeping up with this. And it's like, no, I do care
struggling.
with you. Yeah. And inside it was a mental battle. I'm like, can you imagine somebody whose mind is just on all the time? Their mind is just on. There's no real rest time for them unless they smoke or something like that.
Man,
many people
look,
do. They smoke to bring it down. But their mind is always going. It's like a mental prison that's there, and there's no escape. If you cannot empathize with that, you're going to have to take a step back and try to work on that empathy that you're lacking.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been again, I say I'm a disciplined person. I'm very goal oriented. So when I want to get somewhere, I'm gonna figure out how to do it. And so for the longest, we self medicate without even knowing it. And so I realized I had to work on a couple of things. Yeah. So one, I had to learn to have patience with myself and with others, which means that everything doesn't need to be talked about right then. I had to wait until I had no emotional attachment to what was being discussed first. So that way I could have the patience for other steps that might be needed before I go to 0 to 100 real quick. I also make sure that when I talk to people, I try to treat everybody like a child. Because when we're talking to children, we know that we shouldn't just start yelling at them. We know that they don't know things. We know. So to me, everybody a kid. It's just all I see is baby Kittie in her pink pajamas right now. Like that's all I see. We both kids right here, right?
Not the pink pajamas.
I'm in my green pajamas. You in your pink pajamas. Y'all know we look fly in these auntie sets. Make sure you're watching on the YouTube. Shameless plug. And so what I hear myself go around,
it's okay,
and even learning that kindness even to myself is an ongoing thing. But also doing it to myself has helped me do it with others. Good. And so what I've realized is that body language is difficult for me because I can see when it shifts. I can see when I'm bothering somebody with the things that's already bothering me about myself. And so I let them know, you can't be upset immediately with anybody when they do things. You have to try to explain it first. Like if we're going to anger immediately, we'll never work through anything. You know what I'm saying? We'll never work through anything because now you not listening. I'm not listening. We ain't got no solutions. And so I did have to learn to give it a moment, sit with it and let it pass. So deal with my own anxiety really to give myself the patience to be able to go to people and say, hey, this is what's going on.
Once you find out what you're sensitive to, you'll find out what you react to.
Everything.
Yeah. If you find your sensitivities, you're always going to find out what your reactivities are.
Lost my damn train of thought. I'd be so upset. It's so upset sometimes because I do. But I would like to know, how did you work with frustration and anger? Because you did say that you had so many anger issues. So how did you work through that?
I had to sit in it.
Let yourself be mad.
The way to put it is I had to sit in it. I had to let myself see how far it would go. So the only way you can ever find out what your emotional baseline is if you sit in the actual emotion. So I had to actually really be honest with myself about what my triggers were. And sometimes with my anger, there was no trigger. It just shows up whenever it shows up. And sometimes it's easy to go to an 8, 9, 10. What happens when you're at an 8, 9, 10? What can you do to help you regulate that anger that you're experiencing? Sometimes it'll be secondary emotions that are underneath this because somebody frustrated me, or I feel disappointed, or I feel disregarded here. And then, of course, you work through things. My biggest method when I'm at like a 9 or 10, ice. That's my biggest method.
Like eating, like chewing on ice?
Holding ice.
Oh,
that's the number one method. When I know I'm at a 9 or 10 and like it's probably going to get explosive, you will see me try to go grab a piece of ice. Outside of that, if I'm like at a 6 or 7, I like the sound of crunching.
Okay.
I like anything that sounds like crunching, and I like the sound of paper. So I like to hear paper, just some type of way or something like that. Or just going out for a walk, connected with nature.
Yes.
Stuff like that.
Sure.
As far as frustration and patience are tied together. So I was just talking about it on one of the platforms I'm on this weekend. And I talked about the way that I worked on my patience is I used to go to the grocery store because I cannot stand sitting in lines. And it's to sit in a line. You can't touch your phone. You can't touch a magazine. You can't do anything. You have to sit there. So if a person is scanning 500 things in front of you and then a register shuts down, guess what? You can't turn to your phone. You can't go open up a magazine. You have to sit right there. And you have to just wait because that's a frustrating process. So as you do that, you're growing patience and you're working on your frustration. This is something that's out of my control. What's the frustration going to do if I become frustrated right now? Where is it going to lead me? Building a tolerance to that, working up a tolerance to the point to where you realize I can actually handle all of these things that I'm going through. You just have to tell yourself that I can handle this. If it's not in your control, what can you do? What are you going to stress about it?
Yeah.
Just certain things I had to realize you just have to let go, because if not, what's the outcome? If I allow and we call it emotional hijacking, if I allow my emotions to hijack my logic, I'm going to have an outburst. So I have to use my wise mind. Emotions are there. They're always going to be there. When I rationalize it and I see if this emotion is right, if it's an accurate emotion to have, if yes, we're going to keep it. Now we're just going to rationalize and try to figure out why it's there and what it is I need to do with it. If it's a misplaced emotion, we're going to veto that. It's no reason for this to be here. Find something else to do. So it's a lot of that, a lot of just operating in your wise mind.
That was very validating for me. Thank you for that.
Good.
Yeah, because that's literally the process. When I go, they're like, where are you going? I'm processing. I'm about to see what I need to keep and let go of what eat the meat, spit the bones.
Yeah.
And it's so crazy because my thought from before came back, but now I got a thought on this. So here, right? Just mind going like this. I definitely do the grocery store, and also other annoying little things we got to wait for. Sometimes I sit in those and I'm like, all right, it's just a moment that you get to just breathe and do nothing. And I realize that does help, and we don't know it. And then also when I process things, I know that I people would be like, you won't talk. Sometimes you'll go do something else. Initially, no, I would never just walk away from somebody. But if it gets to that point that I'm about to get disrespectful, I'm not going to allow myself to disrespect somebody else. So some people would be like, hey, I really don't like when you walk away. I totally understand that. And I want to get to the point where I can't. And usually I'm right here. But also I have some issues. And when I get too mad, I get disrespectful. And there's nothing worse than me disrespecting you. So if I walk away, that it's because I've gotten too mad and I need to calm down. It's better for me not to say nothing because his mouth go off. So but
you know where you're going to have to get used to saying something.
I'm getting better.
At least give people at least let the person know that I'm going for a walk or something like that. Because if you just go for a walk, because I have that, even now that's still the struggle that I have. Because when I'm at a 10, it's like, let me get out of here. But then you have to realize I have to tell you that I'm going to go for a walk to calm down, but I am going to come back. Because if you just storm off, that person doesn't know if you're going to come back, if you're going to come back and have a conversation.
Absolutely. That's fair. But not a storm, but more so like a, let's talk about this another time. And it's not fair because in my job, I'm long-winded as fuck. You know how mad you be if I talk for 7 minutes and then make myself mad and now you can't say nothing because you too mad. Like, I understand that. Like, that's frustrating for me too. I can also be accountable and say, hey, we ain't got too many 10 angers all the time. It's less of them. I'm more of what I do more, and I'm not more of that, right? And before we segue, because I found my thought, I'm gonna go back to it. When we were talking about examples of communicating when there's an issue and just understanding, I realized instead of taking things so personal, just tell the person what something feels like to you. So because then they may be like, oh, well, I do that because of this. For example, speaking of the long-windedness, when I talk to people, I'll be like, sometimes you're not giving me anything back, or it feels like, you won't talk to me, da, 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 da. And I say that, now I've opened the door, and it's like, well, you talked for so long that I no longer, like, I'm not here anymore, Samia.
Yeah.
And so then I'm like, that's fair as fuck. But also your body, I like knowing that, like, okay, give me a head nod, give me a little bit of body language, because now if you're like this, I don't know, I am reading your body language. And I also have to be fair and say, when something's wrong, I read your body language and you're okay with it. And so I do it then. So sometimes when it's on another instance, you can't say, well, don't read my body language, just end the conversation. Well, you can't say that, because then you're saying reading your body language and other times isn't okay. And so we end up getting farther and getting more understanding. And now it creates empathy, because now when she on 6.5 minutes, let me give her a head nod so she can round that shit out. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So now they're like, I said, oh, then they shake their head 4 times. Hey, you hear my producer over there cackling a little too hard? She laughing a little too hard for me. Okay. But thank you for chiming in on all those things. I know y'all just got the hell out of a therapy session here. Either I did, one of them. But before we go, we definitely have to get into the sex tip of the day. Okay. So the sex tip of the day is to pay homage to Sexual Essentials, my first company, the one that really helped me get into healing and everything. And for me, that intro was my sensuality and sexuality, right? You guys can always check out all of my classes, learnings, teachings, extra bonus episodes. We have a podcast that's on Patreon strictly dedicated to just sex. So if you're tired of talking about trauma and crying and all that shit, go over there, because it's really fun over there. All right. That also supports the creatives that makes this show. But today's sex tip of the day, I would love to talk to you about how sensuality is affected when you feel safety emotionally, when you feel safe emotionally with your partner.
With your partner. We're connecting emotional safety when you have sensuality.
Because think about it. If I can't talk to you, if I can't tell you nothing, you want me to eat this coochie, you wouldn't listen. Your ass was over talking me. You wouldn't listen to me. You called me this. You say, I never do this. It doesn't make me want to do this. Or now we just start going to therapy and like we going at it 4 times a week now, 5 times a week now. Like, have you noticed anything with your clients?
I will say this, because when I hear intimacy, I think of connection, but when I hear sensuality, I think of connection with self. And so, because I'm leaning more towards intimacy now.
That's fair.
But of course, because when I think about sensuality and stuff like that, I think about things that are not penetration wise, like just
that's very valid.
Connecting
Absolutely.
on spiritual levels, stuff like that. Connecting on spiritual levels, doing recreational stuff, going for walks, doing things like that, massages, feather strokes, stuff like that. I start thinking that way. But in regards to emotional intimacy and emotional safety, emotional safety is opening up a space for someone to be able to not feel judged, right? They feel seen, but they don't feel judged. So if you're opening up a space to where this person can be themselves, they can show who they are on a vulnerable level. You're not judging them. So if they want to explore, if they want to try new things, if they want to, just open up some ideas and things like that, and you allow them the safety to do so, it makes you all connect a lot more. Emotional intimacy is the strongest form of intimacy before anything else, before physical, sexual, mental. It's the strongest one to have, because it's showing that we're connecting on an emotional level. This is our hearts that are intertwined at this point. If a person feels safe emotionally, they're going to open up their body in ways that they probably have never done before with anybody else. So now they're wanting to connect with you. They're wanting to touch. They're wanting to bond and things like that. So I do think that's important, because if you don't have that emotional safety, you're going to build a wall against the person that you truly want to let in, but because our subconscious attempts, the safeguard turns on when you don't feel safe. If I don't feel like I can open up to you, why am I going to want to be intimate with you? And when I say intimate, I don't necessarily mean penetration, because intimacy is just connection. That's the easiest way to say it.
For sure.
So if I feel as though it's not a judge-free zone, I don't feel safe here,
you're going to shut down whether you know it or not
with you. So all of that is always important. I think on top of that, because a lot of people don't understand how they can build emotional intimacy, journal together. You can journal together. You can talk about each other's past. You can do little games where you talk about like emotional things, like, who was the pivot in your life, or who were you closest to? Tell me something about your childhood, things like that, to help you connect on emotional levels. Have vulnerability sessions where you can be vulnerable for 5-10 minutes about something without interrupting this person, without cutting them off, without judging them. Go back and say what it is that they said in your terms, so that way they'll know you were actually listening. Give words of encouragement, celebrate this person, things like that builds emotional intimacy.
Absolutely.
Which puts and opens up the sensuality in a relationship. So yeah, that's my take on it.
Absolutely. I know that I've done, I realize we're sometimes very quick to criticize, but we're not just as quick to offer compliments or, you know, words of affirmation and things like that. So I know I realize that because I am a particular person, I will compliment somebody very quick. And it's like, I want to see you. Right. And then on a personal note, I've fallen for this word adorable. And I realize when I say adorable, what I mean by it and what I think of it as like, I see your quirks and they're cute, you know? And I realize that I have a desire to be looked at as adorable, you know what I mean? Like not in a creepy way, you know, but I have a desire to be looked at that way because I am aware of all my quirks and sometimes I'm battling just accepting my own self and seeing the adorable side of me, but I realize I have to be with somebody that could say, you know, and my producer is like that. I love her. I love her. I could tell that girl everything. I don't know how she got the capacity, right? And mind you, she got to do the show with me. So the business with me. So you know where my mind be going. And she just laughed. She said, Samia, come back. Come back. Let's do this. And the fact that she can laugh at me helps me love myself better. And so I'm so grateful for the people in my life that have seen me through all the stages and they watching me get better and and when I realized like the ADHD thing, they were like, oh, we thought you knew, you just were ignoring it. And I was like, no, I didn't know. So they've been on this journey watching me just on this path of figuring it out, you know. So I'm very grateful for that.
They were understanding and supportive.
Absolutely.
That's what you needed.
That's intimacy for me. That's intimacy for me.
It is.
It took a lot for me just to end it right there. You heard that? I didn't even go on to another thing. All right. And before we go, the last thing is our spiritual tip of the day, which is very similar to the adult tip of the day, because I do think that spirituality involves not only religion, but also different practices, whether that be crystals or just the whole realm, whether it be astrology and things like that. And sometimes people are very resistant to it. And I think it's just a level of ignorance, and very similar to how you teach. You always relate things to us in a way that we can understand, which we appreciate. And so I think it's just talking about something in a small way so people can be like, oh, okay, so maybe we won't be so resistant to spiritual things and sometimes the answers that you need right there. So that's what this segment is supposed to do. And this one is a little different because I've heard you mention it multiple times just in your time here at the Content House, is I want to discuss receiving a vision and following that and what that has done for you, because many don't know that you were a nurse before. And for, what'd you say, 12 years?
Yes.
12 years. Yeah. And now you're people's favorite, you they therapist in their head. This my therapist in my head, right? And you've made all these resources available and attainable and things like that. And so I would just love to hear more about your journey with your vision, because it's definitely something that I resonate with when I took on this, you know, this media group, this network of things. And so I just want people to be able to hear another person talk about how sometimes the most spiritual thing that you can have is a vision that's is literally planted in you, you know?
I think for me, well, let me just dive quickly into it. It was the prophets and the prophetesses in my family who knew the greatness that was in me before I did, because they received the visions before I did. They received the dreams before I did. I'm a dreamer. So I always see things in dreams. They always come. And then, of course, when I see the dream, of course, I pray on it, because sometimes I have to make sure that that's really what I'm supposed to be paying attention to, because some dreams are just there because what you just, you know. And so I didn't think I was going to be leaving nursing. Thought I was going to be in nursing my whole life. But my aunt told me, she saw me on stage, and I said, oh, I was singing finally, because I've been an opera singer for a long time. And so she was like, no, you weren't singing, but you were on stage. And I said, oh. She said, of course, you know, we're believers. You know, I come from a Christian background. She said, well, God said that you weren't going to be in nursing, and he allowed you to be in nursing. So, of course, then my dreams started to flood in. And then when my dreams flooded in and I started seeing the things that now have manifested in my life, I started seeing where I was going to be. I started seeing the books that I was going to do. I started seeing the classes and things like that. And I just trusted the process. I didn't allow fear to resonate, because if fear was going to be there, I wasn't going to take the risk and I wasn't going to take that opportunity. So I allowed myself to be a student of life. I sat in it. When something was there, I would pray on it. Sometimes I would sit and I'll wait and see when it was time, because I'm a person who's really big in trusting the process. You can't rush everything.
You can't rush a Pisces, baby.
Yep. When it's time, it's going to show up, and I guarantee you it's going to show up in a way that's resourceful. And so a lot of the visions that I did have, a lot of the dreams that I had, it would be one moment where exactly the first step that I dreamt would just show up, and I would follow it.
Yeah.
I have a very strong faith. I do believe in spirituality and religion.
Absolutely.
And so because mine is my faith and my devotion, I lean a lot more into God and into prayer and to his will, if anything, because of my relationship with him. I always believe that he's the reason why my dreams come the way that they do. And of course, I believe that this is his will. And just from confirmation, I believe so. I just know how it feels.
You know how you get dressed and you about to go out and you put on the outfit and you're like, this the one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's exactly that. I had to start realizing, like, what does that feeling feel like when it's the right thing? And I definitely resonate with a vision being given. I've learned to respect the way that the visions are given to me, because I see them with my eyes.
Right.
So when I saw this house, it looked like the 80s had died in here. Okay, it looked like the 80s had died in here, but that's not what
it is now.
But this is what I saw. I saw it, and one of the ways that I feel like the universe and God are teaching me patience is I can't always explain it. My mind is always moving a mile a minute. Sometimes it's not my expertise, so I don't actually have the words. So now I got to go research, but I don't know what I'm researching, because it's like seeing a restaurant, but you didn't see the sign. I didn't see the sign on the name of the restaurant. I ain't go inside, but I know exactly what it looked like. So when I see it, I'm like, that's it. That's the one. So now I'm on Google trying to figure it out. And I think that's one of the most difficult things, that sometimes you're the only one who has seen the vision. And most times you're the only one, because ain't nobody giving your vision to other people unless it's something that they're supposed to tell you. Right. And so I've had to definitely learn patience with myself and understand that people didn't see the vision. So you have to understand say yes and no to the things that fit within that, and keep going.
And I had nothing to prove to anybody. I also don't share. Most times whenever something comes to me, I usually don't share it until I start to see that it's working its way into the present. I don't share it. If God gives me a dream, no one typically knows about it. And then I'll come out and be like, Kitty, this is big. I know. I've been working on it.
Better be.
I've just been quiet about it, because I do believe that from a spiritual level, you can be attacked. I've been under spiritual warfare. I've been under spiritual attack, and I know how it feels. And so I don't allow that much access, because I know that some people really will pray against you.
Yeah.
And some people will curse your name. So
you gotta watch that.
Exactly.
I absolutely understand that. When we go back to like that Twitter talk of just the privacy and things like, privacy and things like that, that is one of the reasons that got me into only telling people the things that matter. And it's definitely difficult. My entire life is really me learning that patience, because it's like, they'll know when they're supposed to know. Who are the people that need to know this? If they can't help with this vision, then they can't be in right now. And it also takes so much time and focus away. And I'm already dealing with focus here. So I don't need any more distractions. Now I'm spending more time explaining the vision to you, versus if you're supposed to be here, you will believe me because you're going to have your own vision and I'm going to be in it. If you don't understand, then I don't have the time to explain it to you, baby. Catch me when it pops out, So, I love you very, very, very much. You've been my therapist in my head for I don't know how long. And my show is definitely about bringing people on the show to give them their flowers, to let them know how they have either impacted my life or either letting the world know that, hey, this is one of the things that I've done, even if it's not the therapist that I use. What this person is saying will help you. That's all you guys ask is, how'd you get to this point? Teach me how to do this. That's all the show is, you guys, me telling the truth. Now, some of those truths might be sexual. Sometimes they might be terrible. And sometimes they healing, And so today is one of those. So I just want to let you know that I'm so proud of you. And I see you, and I wish nothing but the absolute best for you.
Thank you.
And if you could, please tell the folks how we can support you, how you're supporting them with your books and your classes, and where they can find you. And we will also drop those links below. Okay?
Of course. Well, you all can subscribe to my YouTube channel for the first thing. Talk to me, Kittie. You all can follow me on IG because that's where I promote a lot of my classes. And you all can also sign up for a class, www.kittierose.com. And the way that I support you all is my workbooks. One of my biggest workbooks right now is Becoming a Better Partner, is about introspective work and you focusing on your flaws and your imperfections and things that you can improve within yourself without pointing the finger towards your partner. It's a completely honest book and it is very popular. And I'm actually really proud of that one. I'm actually really proud of that book because I've seen the tremendous work. There was a girl that told me she sits about her Bible. And that was my biggest compliment.
Okay.
I was like, she said I was crying by page 5. And I said, oh, good.
Good for me.
Somewhere.
Well, I love that. You are a very thorough and detailed woman. And so I know that these classes probably you're going to have to really sit in them because it's going to be a lot of information. So I'm like so excited. I'm definitely going to let you guys know on Patreon when I start taking the classes because that's definitely on my to-do list this year. I think it's time to move forward for me. I think that I've grown a lot, but I think it's time to be a baby again in different parts. I've become a baby again in this career. Yes. And I know that alignment usually follows every area. And so I think it's time to be a baby again when it comes to my mental health and how I'm showing up for myself in the work that I'm doing. Right. I've outgrown the last life coach or therapist and it's time to move on. So I'm super excited for this journey. And I'm so grateful that you just made time as a mom, as a wife, on all these stages that you've been seen on. And you guys make sure that you catch her on tonight's conversations on one of the tours. But otherwise, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And I love y'all. Thank y'all for saving space. If y'all was able to keep up with that, then you a real one. Make sure that you support us below by joining the Patreon, signing up to the Discord, our private group chat, and check in because we do our monthly meetups on there, as well as there are over 300 classes, workshops, hands-on demonstrations from my work with Sexual Essentials, as well as the bonus shows for this podcast and our Just Another Sex podcast show, where we just talk about the intimate and sexual things that you guys want to hear more of as well. So I love y'all and thank y'all so much, and I'll see you next week.